Hey now, and welcome to the Cardinals Stand Out in Your Career podcast presented by Alumni Relations. I'm Nic Taylor, Executive Director of Alumni Relations here at SVSU, and we got a great topic today. I'm really excited. We're going to be talking all about AI in work. How's it going to relate to you and give you some tips and tricks? And I'm really fortunate. We've got an amazing guest today. We have Amber Graden, who is the Chief of Staff for Business Applications and Agents Marketing at Microsoft. It might be one of the longer titles, but it's pretty impressive. And she's a very proud SVSU alum. So Amber, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a thrill to be back.
So I want to start out. We're going to get into the AI stuff pretty quick, but I want to talk first just to kind of hear. It's exciting to have alumni like yourself come back to the institution. Can you walk us through a little bit just of your journey from being a student here at SVSU and moving on, and how did you get where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to tell it as succinctly as possible. So I graduated from SVSU with a degree in accounting. And I always tell people I think accounting is one of those fabulous degrees because you can go so many places, different industries, different sectors. And so I started out with my degree, and my first job ever was my first professional job ever, I should say. I've been working, since I was, whenever I could get a job at the age of 16, I think I was bagging groceries or something. But my first professional job was at Winelander Fitzhugh in Bay City, Michigan, and I worked there primarily as an auditor. And that was a great start to my career. And then from there, I went out west and worked for a CPA firm, another CPA firm that was affiliated with Winelander Fitzhugh called RSM. And I worked for quite a while in public accounting as an auditor, and then found myself wanting to go into what we call corporate, from public to corporate. And so had various roles in the corporate setting, but I soon sort of found a niche in tech. And long story short, knocked on Microsoft's door about 10 years ago or so, and leveraged some experience that I had gained in public accounting, believe it or not, in real estate, because I had clients that were in real estate and construction. And Microsoft has a big real estate portfolio and operates buildings all over the globe, including a massive campus in Redmond, Washington. And so I was able to get into Microsoft with those skills that I gleaned from public accounting. And then from there, went to specialize more in the technology itself. And that's what I do today at Microsoft in our marketing org, focused on tech that enables business process, including, back end business solutions like your CRM and your ERP, as well as agentic capabilities that are really just taking off in companies today.
That's awesome. It's really interesting and cool to hear the career arc. Thank you for putting in the plug for accounting, first of all. I love that. And it's one of those things we talk a lot about here at the institution, that starting off point, you find that interest, and it's going to lead to more interests down the line. So speaking of interest, you're back today. We're really excited to have you back on campus because I know that you are doing the Dow Visiting Artist and Scholars Fellowship here. Can you maybe explain a little bit about just some of the things you're doing on campus next couple of days while you're here? Sure.
So this trip is, I would say, dual factor. So I happen to be in town helping my mother. My mother still lives in Bay City, Michigan. In fact, generations of my family are from Bay City, Michigan. So I have deep roots in the area. And I was able to sort of attach on an experience with SVSU while I'm here talking to classes of business students about career, accounting, AI, and really just offering them a chance to get an outside-in perspective from an alum, somebody who works in an industry that is a bit far from, where we sit here on campus in Saginaw, Michigan, or University Center, Michigan, as it were. And so, it's honestly been such a great experience to reconnect with people and just I can remember myself in those days, in their shoes. And I have to say, I've been so impressed with the people I've met here. I mean, just some really bright students coming out of SVSU.
Awesome. So, today's topic, we're going to talk about AI at work and some of those things. And, with your experience now at Microsoft, maybe talk a little bit about why you think it's important, or what are some of the things that you work in with AI personally? What types of AI do you use?
Yeah, sure.
Or and we'll go down the road here a little bit and talk about young professionals and where they can get started. But,
Sure.
But for you as a senior executive and working now, what are some of those things?
Yeah,
that you
absolutely. Let me maybe set the stage a little bit with perhaps what's happening in work broadly, and then I can talk about what I do personally at work every day. So what I think is happening broadly at work is there's this new technology, and AI is what's called a general purpose technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last time we had something as major as AI was back in the computer and internet, times when that took off, right? So it's this massive opportunity that we all have to change the way work gets done with this new tech. And what's happening across enterprise or corporations, companies, large, small, and everywhere in between, is leaders are asking themselves, how on earth do I take this powerful new technology and bring it into my organization to ensure we do things better? And compete ultimately is, a lot of times companies think about, how can we get better, compete. So in that context, Microsoft is obviously at the forefront of what's happening with AI. And in my day-to-day, I use it all day, every day. And I'm and part of that is, is because I've had the benefit of being within a company where I've been able to learn, I'm helping to market the tech, of course, but that's enabled me to have a unique point of view in terms of learning the tech and learning from oftentimes the people building the tech and having, the opportunity to, to talk to them and work with them. So let me give you a sense so Microsoft's product in productivity and business process, it all starts with Copilot, M365 Copilot, which I know at the university folks are using, and I absolutely love that. And so that's what I use every day, all day. So Copilot is our UI for AI. You can go in there in our chat experience and, access large language models. You can access agents that have been pre-built for you. You can go in there and build an agent yourself. And so those are things I am in probably, 7 out of 10 of the hours that I'm in the office. It's really helped me.
So you mentioned, I picked up, you mentioned agents, and in my job, I've used a lot of AI and different. We were talking about Copilot earlier, being part of our Office 365 suite here as a university employee. Let's take a step back. A lot of folks that are viewers of our podcast maybe not have they don't have a lot of experience with AI in general. So when you say something like a language model or an agent, how could that help a professional out there in the workforce right now? What would an agent do for you? Yeah,
maybe let's start with a few broad statements that I'll talk about related to AI in terms of how it can help, and then I'll specifically address agents, because it's a slightly unique thing. But so I would, when I think about the value that AI brings to somebody at work, I usually think of, 3 key things that I use in my day-to-day. The first is information synthesis and summarization. So think about how long it would take if you're somebody in whatever specialization you're in needs to ingest massive amounts of information. In my world, it might be, hey, there are these 5 to 10 research papers that I need to sort of read and distill and figure out how do I summarize and make sense of it all. That is something that I do every day. AI is really powerful in the sense that you can upload that information to AI, ground it, and grounding means ensure that AI is kind of ring fencing what it's translating to that specific information. And so that's one key way that I use it absolutely, at least every week, if not, daily in some capacity. So that's one. The second, I would say, communication and content creation at scale. So being able to quickly, draft a white paper, a brief, an email, whatever it is that I'm doing. I do a lot of internal communications. And so oftentimes I'll, go into go into Copilot and give it a few bullets, tell it, give it some context, tell it what I want it to do. And it gives me a draft that, is usually 85% baked. And I might tweak and iterate with it a little bit, but it's really great. And the other thing I love about using AI in that way is I can generate a piece of content, and then I can use that same bit of content to scale for different usages. Yeah. So meaning I might write a blog with AI. I might turn that blog into an email. I might turn it into a piece of social media or it could even be external or internal.
As you're saying that, I was getting excited because that's, I think, one of my big uses is content for social media.
Yes.
I cannot keep up to date with what's going to really affect the algorithm and get out there and be seen as much. Yeah. And it's helped me be more effective of a communicator on social media out of that. So sorry. I was excited when you said that. I was like, yes, this is what I'm
doing. Yeah. And then the third way I would say I use it constantly is as a thought partner. And so thought partnership, but also decision support and analysis. There's a pre-built agent in M365 Copilot called Researcher. I use that all the time. It's deep research, does a really thorough job, and it allows me to, sort of, if you prompt it and you say exactly what you want the output to look like, it's absolutely brilliant. So those are a few ways that I use it every day.
I'm really interested in that one because it seems to be, we hear a lot about content creation and synthesizing information, but when you say, a decision analysis or, the researcher agent, can you maybe give me an example that you would use that in your everyday work?
Here's an example and in fact, I've been talking to the students about one of my favorite things to do, which is in the vein that we're talking about with, decision support. So one thing I like to do is take thinking that I've generated myself, not generated by AI, but my fresh thoughts. And then I'll go and ask Copilot, basically to help me poke holes in what I've come up with and ask me. The prompt sometimes says, apply the Socratic method to what I've written here and ask me some questions to deepen my thinking here. Tell me ways that this argument is strong or this piece is strong, and tell me where it's weak. And it just gives me fresh perspective and different ways to think about it. And then oftentimes, I'll go and maybe I'll rework something about it, and then I'll just keep running it through until I get it to a place where I'm happy. But the time savings is immense. And so ultimately what I'm doing is just thinking so much faster and able to do more ultimately.
Okay. And that's a fascinating example. Sorry. That's when I'm sitting there going like, okay, I can think of 5 different ways that I want to use it.
Oh yeah.
And that, getting back to the agents for somebody that's not familiar, what is an AI agent?
Yes. So very simply, an agent is a type of AI that will take an action for you. So you can build agents that, let's use your example of social media for an example.
Sure.
You could develop your own agent that's called the Nic social, alumni relations.
I have a private one and a professional one, just so
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
I know exactly what you're talking.
But you could create an agent that will take, an input from you on a topic, create a bit of social media, and then you can have it built in your workflow to then go as far as even posting it. It depends on how you build it. But the ultimate point I want to make here is it's really about taking an action for you and getting things done for you on your behalf.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because of our shared experience and some of my experience with AI, I get excited about these conversations and in talking about agents and these things. I want to back up because I know our audience is the whole group of alumni out there. If someone's feeling a little overwhelmed about AI, I've got a couple alumni I'm thinking in particular. They're overwhelmed by AI. They know that and it could help them professionally, but they just don't know where to even get started.
Yes.
What would be advice that you would give to that beginner
person?
Yeah,
it's ironic you asked me that because I had a dear friend from high school reach out to me not that long ago with that exact question. He's like, how do I get started? And so I set up time with him and we chatted about it. And the way that I talked to him about it was, step one, again, get familiar enough with the concepts. So, understand what AI is, understand what large language models are, understand what hallucinations are and how you avoid hallucinations. Understand why it's important to have a human in the loop when you're using AI. And and I could go deep on these things, but there's, I would say, a level of baseline knowledge that you can get. And the great thing about this is that there are courses out there. One example is just, you can go on Microsoft Learn, and there are, intro to AI. You can go on places like LinkedIn Learning. You can go to Coursera or Udemy. There's a ton of information out there. And from different companies. Microsoft has some, of course, Google and OpenAI and others have it. So you just have to go and find the one that works for you. I use Copilot, so I would tend to point people to Microsoft Learn, which is, if the university is using Copilot, that's where I would point you. So the first layer is understand baseline the concepts that we're dealing with. The second layer, I would say, is get familiar enough with the tools. So know what the different flavors of models that exist out there. There's ChatGPT from an OpenAI. There's Anthropic and Claude. There's Gemini from Google. There are different options, and different models do things, differently, or they perform differently in certain cases. AI experts use this term called jagged to refer to the fact that, one AI model might be brilliant in one thing, but less good in another. So you have to know enough about the different models that exist to be able to figure out which is best for your particular thing. And so generally just getting familiar with the tools is the next thing that I recommend. So thing one, the concepts. Thing two is the tools. Thing three that I tell people is get decently good at prompting and get a good prompting framework, because ultimately what you're doing when you're using AI is you're giving the AI a set of instructions. And so it's important to make sure that you give a prompt that sets the context for the AI, kind of says, you are this persona, or, this is how I want you to speak. You want to tell the AI, obviously, what it is you want. But ultimately, you want to say, this is how I want you to return the information. Do you want it as a paragraph? Do you want it in a table? Do you want some bullets? Do you want it in a PowerPoint? Like, you have to be very specific. It's best to be very specific. And then the final element of a prompt, I would say, is make sure that you give it its boundaries. So you might say to it, search the entire web for this information. Or you might say, only look at this research paper that I'm giving you. So that's the third thing, is get good at prompting. And then finally, the fourth level is take all of that knowledge and actually apply it to what I would call a workflow, like something that you do every day. And if it's something that you do that is repeatable, that is where you're going to get so much value, because instead of doing something, and even if it's an annoying thing that takes 10 minutes, if you can automate it, that's time well saved.
I'm smiling over here because I needed you like 2 years ago, because you were saying everything that I've learned, and that was perfect advice for a beginner.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
When I think about the prompting, I always learned, the context, the instruction. So tell it what it is, give it its instruction, and then also think about the output, how you want it, and the boundaries that are there. And I think that's a little intermediate help maybe for some folks out there, is now, you're getting comfortable with what these different models or what these different programs can do. So how do we then start using it in there and being able to prompt? I mean,
that's right.
It's interesting because I've also seen prompting change over time.
Yes, it has. And even what you'll find more and more today is within the tools themselves. They've been putting sample prompts or sample suggestions for how to use the AI. So I think the tools itself have become more user-friendly over time, and they'll continue to be so. But again, there is so much information out there, on some of those places. LinkedIn Learning is an awesome place for some of this.
One of the first things that I remember doing with AI is, I was really bad at prompting at the beginning, and I just simply asked it, tell me, how should I prompt you to do
Yes.
something? And it started going through and telling me.
That is one of my favorite hacks is actually using AI in a circular way.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So let's get to a little more intermediate. You said you used a term there in your response. I find fascinating, and I think it's one thing that opponents of AI like to point out a lot, and that is the hallucination part that happens. You talked a little bit about, giving some advice about how to avoid hallucinating within it. Okay, so I'm an intermediate user. I consider myself an intermediate user. What's some advice you could give me about making sure that my models are not giving me any type of hallucination?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I should say, what is hallucination too?
Yeah, it's returning, because at the end of the day, AI's job is to return something. And it's not often going to say, I don't know. It's going to return something that a hallucination by definition is something that it returns that seems plausible, but isn't correct. And it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So the best, in my experience, the best way to avoid this from happening is a thing called grounding. And so grounding is very specifically ensuring that whatever you're reasoning over, you tell AI very specifically what you want it to look at. And so I have a couple of favorite ways to do this. Lately, one of my favorite ways is to use something called Notebook. So Microsoft has Notebook in Google language. It's Notebook LM. But what you do is you very specifically upload only the things you want the AI to reason over, and then it'll do that. It'll stick within that body of information. Okay. But even in your prompt, so you remember when we were talking about the elements of a good prompt, you can be very specific about setting those guardrails, and you could say something like, only draw from, these sources. And you could say, don't go anywhere else, don't go, and a lot of times I've noticed too, there are even when you go to build certain things, you'll see toggles that'll very specifically say, do you want it to go to the web or not? And so you just have to be really specific.
Awesome. It's interesting. I'm sitting here as you talk. I'm thinking of the profession out there. We have a little plug, but we have a career fair coming up for alumni who are looking to, move in their career, or that's coming up in May. All my alumni out there, check us out at svsu.edu/alumni. We'll have information on how to RSVP to that. But for those folks, as we are sitting here having this conversation, one of the things that I was thinking about is there are a lot of folks out there who use AI, and there are a lot of people out there that use it strategically. What are some ways in which, if I were one of those, now I'm not one of those folks that's looking for a career change, but if I was, what are some of the ways that I can show the difference for me that would make me a more attractive candidate for certain places?
I love this question, because this is part of the reason why I was really excited to come talk to students while I'm in town this week. And so I talked about this notion of sort of the pyramid of, how to get started is ultimately figuring out how to use it in workflows at work, or, whatever you're doing in very specific ways, and particularly with things that are repeatable over time, right? And so every organization has, different functions, and all those functions have repeatable processes. Sometimes they're well understood, sometimes less so. But what I think students today have a great opportunity is going into an organization with some, I would call, pretty solid AI skills that I realize they're going to have to play around and develop and sort of go to these resources, these courses, and get up to speed, but ultimately use it themselves. But I think they're at a great advantage if they can develop these skills and go into an organization with fresh eyes, armed with the ability to think about how to use AI. And I think a huge part of their value prop is going to an employer and saying, hey, I know how to use this. I have built XYZ thing in my own life. And you could, whatever it is, you could say, I know how to build agents. I've, I've taken the time to learn Copilot Studio. Which is one of Microsoft's agent building tools. You can also do it in Agent Builder and M365 Copilot. But being able to say, I've done this, and here are some great examples, and here are some examples, knowing what kind of organization you are and knowing what kind of function this is, of what I could come build or help think through how to do. And I really think that'd be valuable for, especially today when organizations are trying to figure out how to bring it into their processes.
As you're saying that, I'm, again, of course, internalizing this all. I'm trying to think of the different ways in which I do this. Are there fields out there that, maybe you were surprised to see AI having such a big impact that, when we tend to think, like we talked about content creation and some of this communication, there got to be some fields out there that you're like, okay, we didn't think of AI as having a big impact here. And now we're seeing a new way of doing things or a new example that they're out there. I mean, it's pretty pervasive. It's crossed all the career fields.
I would say, let me maybe talk about where I'm really excited for it to do more and to go. I think, so former accountant, former, I've worked in accounting orgs, I've worked in finance orgs, I've worked as an auditor. The one area that I'm I'm excited about a lot of things, but the one that I'm particularly excited about is accounting and finance.
How so?
So I spent so let me take different things that I've done in my career.
Sure.
So I've had jobs, probably for many jobs for many years, where I was what's called either a financial analyst or so oftentimes I was building forecasts for companies. Other times I was building financial models to do things like analyze deals, to think about different, to support deal negotiation and things like this. I've recently learned how to use Copilot in Excel and Claude in Excel.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind. Yeah. And I've been showing students this week about how they can build pretty simple models for now in Excel. I mean, I've just been giving them simple examples. It's not to say you couldn't build robust models, but it blows my mind. And so I'm really excited about what that's going to mean for finance people, because a lot of that was, I would say, not the most interesting work for a financial analyst to be literally just plugging in, formulas into cells and building it. And then finally, once you built it all, you got to the part you actually liked where you could analyze the deal and work with the business on, the strategy of the deal, because you were just building, tweaking. But now AI can do that so fast. So that's one example, taking like financial analyst or FP&A person, even just your basic accountant. I started out obviously as an auditor, but I've also had jobs in accounting organizations where my job was reconciling accounts, for example. And that happens in organizations it's called month-end close or quarter-end close. It's a really narrowed, expansive time, and you have to work really, really hard to get everything done really quickly. And now there's AI that can do this for you. Of course, there's humans in the loop. Of course, there's oversight, but it's so much more automated, and it frees people to spend time on the more strategic things. And, Amber 20 years ago would have really loved that.
It is, it's interesting to hear that portion. And I think it also hits home the fact that why it's so important to have alumni like you come back to campus and talk about these topics with our students, because even as someone who is out in the professional world and likes to think of himself as an AI, maybe intermediate user, that's an example that I got to that point where I was having to analyze a lot of data in that area. I don't know that I would have gotten to that level of, let's plug it in here. This is where it could work.
But I say that, and the one caveat that I've been telling students this week about is I still want them to understand what the different, so let's take the Excel example. I still want them to be able to understand what the different formulas do in those cells and be able to look at a model and see the logic. It doesn't mean you just have AI build it and you walk away. There needs to be a human in the loop to analyze it, to understand, how to fix something if something's not quite right. I mean, of course, you can use natural language and ask the AI to fix something, but I also think it's important for them to understand how they could do that themselves.
I think it comes to that bigger question of, not to get too philosophical out here, but we have that question all the time about AI and its impact on folks having a job
Mm-hmm.
or doing their job. And I feel like it's a technology, and this is only a personal opinion. This is not an opinion of the university or anyone else out there. But I feel like the folks who understand the underlying work that's being done will then in turn be able to write much better prompts and turn around and produce much better work at a more efficient rate.
100%. It's going to augment people. And this is again is my personal point of view. I think it's truly going to augment people in meaningful ways.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make free them up to do different things. And there's as we happen to be on this example of accounting and finance, and part of that's because I come from there. It's what I graduated from at SVSU. There's also an example that we could draw from the 1980s in accounting and finance. So in the 1980s, the introduction of spreadsheet software emerged. So I think it was Lotus 1, 2, 3, and maybe Excel later. I don't know the chronology. But what's interesting about that, and you mentioned jobs, what happened in the 1980s with spreadsheet software, the number of bookkeeper jobs went down, but the number of sort of higher level accounting and analyst jobs actually went up because they were doing more and more with this new technology and Lotus and Excel and whatever else was out there.
I think it definitely emphasizes the point of continual education, right? Continuing on.
That's right.
And always learning more. Even someone like myself who's farther along in their career, I have a lot to learn in order for the next 10 to 15 years of my career to be super successful.
Well, and it's never going to stop, to your point. I mean,
exactly.
Somebody asked me the question, they said, give me 3 pieces of advice for somebody in the early stages of their career starting out today, and then give me 3 pieces of advice that they'll need later. And I said, that's an interesting question. But I won't give you all 3, but I'll give you one from each of those, ranges. And thing 1 that I said to them now is get fluent with AI, know how to use it in meaningful ways. And then the other thing that I said later in your career is just be agile, because you're going, I don't know what the AI from 10, what it's going to be 10 years from now, but I do know you're going to have to stay with this and learn along with it.
I would love to point out that Mrs. Curtis out there, who got me in trouble for passing notes back in the 3rd grade, social media is a whole career now, and it's an old career. Now we're going to go 10 years, 15 years down the road. Who knows what careers are going to come out next?
Yes, exactly. And when people say, what's the impact on jobs and professions, I always say there is one.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's going to mean less jobs or more jobs, or less jobs but different jobs, or more jobs but different jobs. I have no idea. Nobody knows this. But what we know for certain is that there's this massively powerful technology, and that we're at an inflection point. And I would argue we should all be learning this, because this is the wave that we need to ride now.
Absolutely. Well, this has been extremely helpful. This has been, this is fun for me. I love this conversation. I know we're getting close to the end, and we always finish our podcast with kind of the same question. Okay. So we've talked a lot. We've kind of hit all around from advice to, specifically what makes a great prompt, right? The 3 different uses of AI. I want you to kind of clear your brain of all those things, and I want you to picture the gold alumni, someone who's graduated in the last 10 years, who's out there, they're at the beginning of their career, they're getting started. What's one big piece of advice that Amber would give that person as it pertains to AI and their work?
Yeah, I would. So I gave a bunch of advice on how to use AI. So let me maybe flip it a little bit and give you something that I don't want you to forget, that is, in my mind, as important as the tech and as important as the AI. I would say that now more than ever, relationships, communication, being able to work well with others is more important to focus on in parallel with the AI. And why do I say that? I mean, AI is this massive opportunity that we have to have vast amounts of knowledge and intelligence at our fingertips. And we're going to be able to learn to do things so much faster. but it doesn't take the humans out. And it
Right.
also means that we need to ensure that we're honing those skills,
Mhm.
in parallel and not forgetting those. Because at the end of the day, it's the people, it's the relationships. That's ultimately how work gets done in an organization. And those two things.
So I just want you to acknowledge we did not set this up, right?
No.
We didn't talk. Thank you. That was for my freshman, my CT 100 course out there that we just finished. And we spent all semester talking about your soft skills and working in groups. And that, yes, the technology you have to still do these things really well.
That's right. That's right.
I'm going to give you an air high five. That was an amazing home run. Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you so much. Well, Amber, I really appreciate your time and coming in and talking to us. I think for me, one of the best parts of my career, my job now, is getting a chance to see alumni and what they're doing now, but also being able to celebrate their success. And having you back on campus is a treat for us. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking a little time with us today to talk about a pretty heady topic. And
it's my pleasure. It's something I'm super excited about. And it's been such a thrill to be back. And it's been wonderful. So thank you.
Awesome. We're glad you're here. For those of you out there, I just want a quick reminder. Again, Alumni Relations is always there to connect with you, connect you to the institution. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to us either via email at alumni@svsu.edu. In the meantime, check us out at svsu.edu/alumni for all information on our upcoming events, things that we're getting ready, some great stories about some amazing alumni that are out there. And we hope that you really enjoyed our time together. Don't forget, we love it when our alumni stand out in their community. And it's a great day to be a Cardinal. Thank you so much.